Hi, Arzan. Welcome. Great. Thank you for being here. And so we'll get started. A very interesting conversation. We've got, a lineup of somebody from channels, somebody from mutual funds as asset management, and then of course we have Aditya here, who's going to be talking about some emerging trends in technology. So it's going to be a very interesting mix of questions and some thoughts that are going to emerge from this session, hopefully. And especially around the topic is such where we're talking about financial inclusion, right? And with so much of digital happening around us, right? So much of interconnected between services and products that we're all witnessing as customers. It would be very interesting to explore what's next. India, of course, has been recognized, as probably the global hub of fintechs now. And of course, a lot of it, thanks to the Government of India initiatives, a lot of other, initiatives by a lot of innovations by fintechs, which is of course riding on the India stack, that has really helped, to kind of spurt this growth. But looking at still, some of the challenges that we come across, right? Whether it is digital lending, whether it is customer acquisition for various products and services, there's still a long way to go for us, right? So, with the huge populace today that we have, which remains unbanked, Arzan, my question is this for you? So we've heard a lot of buzz in the recent past few days about online grocery ordering, with what Meta has done with Jio. Is this kind of a precursor to what can happen, in groceries to financial services, right? We're assuming that a lot of super app aspirations are there with Meta. And how does this kind of, work for a very tightly regulated financial services industry? It has been very traditional in its approach so far. And where do you see Meta kind of helping fintechs and other financial services to adopt WhatsApp, to be able to include a lot of that unbanked or underbanked, or even in larger parts of the urban and suburban population? How do they kind of make themselves more investment savvy, if I were to say that?
Very long question, but I'll try. So first of all, WhatsApp is a technology platform. And so technically agnostic to any segment or industry or vertical, but because it's a consumer app-driven engagement, it is common to any industry which serves a very large consumer base. So typically financial services as a whole is a very big audience for WhatsApp banking, and that's primarily because it serves a very large financially included audience, not just in metros, but even outside. So as a technology, we enable businesses to build their experiences for their end consumers, whether it is pre-purchase, when they are considering to buy something, during the purchase, when they're actually being able to buy something from WhatsApp, like how you saw in the Jio app, to even post-purchase when it comes to customer service automation or doing any kind of business support services, which can be automated, saving a lot of cost for the business and a much better experience to the consumer. So as a platform, we are obviously industry agnostic. The reason why financial services and fintechs are at the helm, because they're the biggest consumers which are being targeted. They're, the way we've progressed as a nation on financial inclusion is absolutely tremendous. And that is why more and more people are coming to the platform. So that is the first answer to your question. The second part, look, on a population of 1.3 billion, where we have 400 million plus consumers who are currently using WhatsApp, if you look at any consumer brand, the largest of brands in our country, whether it's a Flipkart or an Amazon, they really haven't been able to go beyond targeting 150 million active monthly consumers who've consumed their product either through their app on the mobile or on their website. which means there is a huge room for growth for any brand. Okay, let's take fintechs for example, to find that population who is digitally included but never really purchased or done anything online. They could well be having the financial power to do it. They could well be targeted in different languages depending on geography and their first preferred language. But it's just that because this audience is suddenly very visible, and due to internet penetration accelerating in the last half a decade, is where biggest of brands and marketers are seeing a potential to go and see how can they include these audiences. And the biggest reason why WhatsApp has become such a powerful medium is because brands have realized that the audience's digital presence today is highest on WhatsApp than any other platform. Right? It's an app that you probably check first thing in the morning or the last thing at night. You're there for like maybe an hour or two collectively for the whole day. So it becomes a very natural, intuitive way to connect with your audiences, because even audiences now want to connect with businesses the way they choose to, not when a telecaller chooses to call them or when an email comes to them asking for, like they want to do it at their pace, which is why I think there is a very big opportunity across businesses, and financial services is obviously leading the way.
Great, thanks, Arzan. Would you want to kind of comment on, so SBI, of course, SBI Mutual Funds is one of the largest asset mutual funds out there in India. Do you kind of, and then we've seen that, with this whole UPI, initiatives that have been launched. However, there's still a miss, right? We still see a lot of population, especially beyond, let's say, tier 2 cities, not really exposed to digitally. We're not talking about physically somebody coming into a branch and investing, but digitally, if they, want to access or want to invest, there still remains, some dark. It's like a vacuum, right? So do you see, how do you see basically bridging this gap for the masses, right? Where does investor education, where does investments, even if they are small but consistent, right? Do you see Meta, or what are some of the things that you see in terms of, tech addressing these opportunities which still exist?
Yeah, it's a good question, because we've also been grappling around the low offtake of financial inclusion. And this is, for over the years, we had multiple challenges. The first challenge was identity issues that got solved through your Aadhaar. The second challenge was access with the mobile penetration that kind of got solved. The third issue was financial education. We've been running these mutual fund Sahiye campaigns and others to try and get more and more people to understand what these new generation products are. The fourth big thing today is about end user experience. I think that is where we are still grappling to get financial services kind of right. The experience for financial products vis-a-vis, let's say, an e-commerce, or let's say any other products that you buy, is also based on a trust index. It's money that you're dealing with, it's investments that you're dealing with. People are kind of happy with certificates, things that they know, things that they can deal with. This transformation has to happen. And sitting here in an air-conditioned room in a big city like Mumbai, it's a little easy for me to say, why does somebody in a small town want all this? I think it's an iterative process. There are, at every piece of, if things are falling in place, you have all of the levers that are required, the entire infrastructure guardrails that are available, fraud rails that are available for us to at least do the transaction digitally is available. Now the next thing is to get that experience right. Now to get that experience right, people have been experimenting. So you've been trying to build use cases which are, some years ago we did SMS-based banking, SMS-based transactions. And that's because your 3G was not there, your digital footprints were not there. But that was an innovation at that point of time. Today, everybody has apps and websites, but again, the experience is kind of jankier. It's not working perfectly. And financial services per se is a very high jargon-based industry because of the regulatory. So you've got to solve for that too. So there is a communication. But the last thing is that you've got to be everywhere, right? What we like about what WhatsApp is doing and what we're also doing with WhatsApp is that you make it easy. You don't have to download an app. You don't have to go to a particular website. You don't have to. You just say hi on our WhatsApp channel, and you get all the information. That
And
you
it's
can
trusted with that blue tick.
get. There's a blue tick too. But the bigger thing there is that the experience, as it starts getting, it's always a muscle memory. As you start getting better at it, you will see this take off. But the big challenge for us was solving for education. We're yet to fully solve for that. And then we solve for experience. And once you solve for experience, I think this will take off. But I'm very hopeful, right? You know, today financial penetration in India for a very long period of time before Jan Dhan happened was so low. Before demonetization happened was so low. Before COVID happened was extremely low. Now things have just skyrocketed. So there's a lot of fintech innovation that's happening. There are a lot of infrastructures that are coming into play. And there are existing infrastructure which are now being leveraged to make that happen. I'm more hopeful than ever before that you will finally see, I don't want to call bottom of the pyramid, but people capable of investing getting an opportunity to invest. And that they are in millions, hundreds of millions.
Correct. So, in solving for these problems, would you want to share with us what were, let's say, the top three, ways in tech or use of tech that you really, helped you kind of, get to that point?
No, the one thing, of course, clearly was that you need to build a very open structure, an open architecture. You just can't say you have this asset or this app. You have to work with partners. One of the stuff that we've done is we built in 2017-18 our own stack that we call it InvestStack, SBI InvestStack. We use this InvestStack and we have partnership with all the fintechs that they use this. So all our experience building digital experiences are now not necessarily only a B2B experience. It's a very good B2B2C experience. And the minute you are able to build a good quality B2B2C experience, that leverage actually kicked in. The second thing we are still experimenting is regional localization, right? So it's a tough cookie to crack because only a small portion of India speaks English and all our financial conversations are in English and all assets are in English. And we got to crack that part, right, if you really want rural penetration. So we've started with our Hindi website and Hindi transaction capabilities. It's very, very early days, and as we start building more regional and more capability, that's when will happen. And the last thing is affordability. And for a very long period of time, we were very obsessed with having high transaction count, average ticket size being low. We today have tokenized, right? You can do transactions of 100 rupees in a mutual funds today, right? So the economies of scales actually have made penetration easy. We actually work with a small fintech entity called Pinbox. They are actually building a solution for savers in small rural Orissa, who from a onboarding experience to final even the self-service model is completely built on a WhatsApp kind of an experience. So yeah, so it's an experiment. It's some way to go, but I think partnership is a way to make this happen.
Sure. Thank you. Aditya, so building up on that, especially on the tech, so you do a lot of consulting with enterprises, right? And you also execute for the enterprises. Yeah. What are some of the, largest or emerging tech that you really see? So of course, WhatsApp clearly remains one of the most loved app that is downloaded. But again, a large part of Indian population again still is surviving on feature phones. They do not have smartphones yet. So while we may say that we have about 600 million users on WhatsApp, but again they could be probably on a very light app of WhatsApp, and the others are on feature phones. So how do we leverage? What are those interesting pieces of technology that can actually be used to look at financial inclusion outside of this channel, right? For distribution, for acquisition, investor education. He talked about the onboarding experience and reducing the friction in an onboarding. So how do you what has been your experience, and what do you see as the new kind of sets that where fintechs are looking at adopting?
Yeah. So if you, thanks Sonia for the long question again. Fintech if you just take a step back, fintech has been a key player in the whole financial inclusion strategy for India. right? And if you look at all the different companies and platforms that have been exponentially grown, right, over the last maybe, thanks to the pandemic, over the last 2 years and maybe even before that, I think the market stands around 50 billion right now, easily,
Wow,
easily,
okay.
right? That's the, if you look at the market cap at least. Now why has it grown, right? It has grown because all the tech giants have invested, right, in terms of can we get people onto these platforms in various ways, right? So there's a lot of data, there's a lot of customers, right? So I think where we are moving is people, before the pandemic used to talk about omni-channel, now they're talking about omnipresent, right? So what does that mean? That means today if I'm communicating with a customer on WhatsApp or any other channel, right, how do I take that conversation, make it live across my other channels, right? For example, phygital or digital, right? It could be a footfall at a bank, like for example, SBI, right? How do I translate that conversation back into a phygital conversation? Because if you want to continue the conversation again, right, the customer experience should not drop. It should be a warm handover, as we call it, right? That could be across even IVR, it could be across a call center, right? So two main technology trends emerge. One is how do you do the communication, contacting and providing, right, information. So if you just look at purely the urban tier 1 and potentially even the tier 2 market now, thanks to WhatsApp, right? I think one of the web and app interfaces, you have conversational AI, which is playing a huge role. If you look at the number of low-code players out there in the market and the tech giants investing in natural language processing algorithms, right, it's become massive, right? Because that'll really help you gratify customers instantaneously. You can do transactions, you can do financial transactions, which is linked with different payment gateways, right? You can also raise queries and tickets even on citizen service governed portals, right? That's very important. And how does that actually translate into a physical form? Now, IVR is getting replaced by voice bots, right? And voice bots which are vernacular, which is the most complicated use case in India to solve. As Mr. Srinivas was saying, like having a Hindi website and a Tamil website, it's not easy as translation, right? You need good vernacular skills and technology to understand that, right? So that's getting translated into CCAI solutions. If you look at all the big players out there in the market, right, they are focusing on how do you replace your standard, static IVRs with really modern way of cognitive voice bots. So if you say hello loudly, it'll understand your tone, right, if you're already a registered customer, and it'll react to you in a very different way, right? So that is obviously the art of possible, right? You do still have static IVRs. It'll take us a while to get to a cognitive way of working, but then that can really transform the experience. And if a person's having a conversation on WhatsApp and continues back on a call center, right, it's not going to start from ground zero in terms of name and identity verification, right? So this whole contact center AI and conversational AI is a huge space now for urban tier 1 and tier 2 markets, right? The next thing, if you look at when you're talking about even physical stores, right, I think obviously the whole world is moving towards cloud, right? The various cloud, different technologies. But I think cloud coupled with blockchain, right, is going to be, I would say, the silver bullet for most of the physical interactions which are happening. And why is that? Is because it gives you user control for customers and for the organization and for the vendors. It gives you identity authentication like Aadhaar and PAN. And if you look at, there are so many startups out there. Like today's biggest use case in fintech is lending. Right? There are so many articles out there and why they're shutting down a lot of apps.
No wonder RBI took a note of it.
Yes, lending is huge because lending in, as Arzan was saying, if you want to go down to the panchayatis, right? There, lending is like in 1,000 rupees, right? That's lending. But how do you get to those places, right? Through these apps. But then you need to regulate that. You can just give your PAN number and you can get onboarded, right? You can talk to a voice bot and then it fills your form automatically. You don't need educated people, right? So blockchain is going to really transform that as well, right? And I feel this is not a technology, but I think the most thing overarching all this is someone like Zerodha who's doing it really well. It's called financial literacy, right? Today, I think financial literacy, I was reading somewhere, don't want to quote the name here, but I think it's about less than 25% across adult male and females, right? That means when you're going to invest in a platform, on a platform which gives you access to many assets, right? People don't know what it means. Like when we were talking about NAV,
Yes.
right? Or you're talking about returns, or you're talking about how do you calculate an ROI for a mutual fund. People don't understand that, right? They just see ads and they invest 1,000 rupees every month, right? That financial literacy, as long as it goes up, technology adoption also will go up, because AI, machine learning alone will not be able to solve the future. Right? So that's how I kind of would categorize that.
So I have just one question before we kind of, we kind of move forward. So technology is one side of it, Aditya, right? There's only that much that technology can do. We talked about conversational AI, right? You talked about Hindi and vernacular translation. So my point kind of goes back to, Srinivas sir, is that, where does investment from FI come into the picture? So, as much as you may want to adopt technology, we've also heard really sad stories about failures of technologies, right? Bots have been there for probably more than a decade. We're not talking about conversational AI, which means a different kind of processing power, which means a different kind of training altogether. So, from the largest, mutual funds today that exist, how are you really solving for that problem? Because at the end of the day, there has to be a commitment from even the organization to say that, okay, I am going to invest in resources who are going to kind of help us with this financial literacy. And then, so what are some of those back-end challenges that you see today, which can tomorrow be leveraged as opportunities, with the tech that he's talking about?
No, I think that's a challenge, right? There's a limited commitment to making this work. What I mean to say it is that usually people pick up what's on the shelf and try and go with it. There's a lot of hard work that is required. I mean, I gave you this example of before conversational AI, what we were trying to do. And now conversational AI is an investment that you need to do. Similarly, there was SMS banking today, mobile banking, there is app-based banking, and now we have moved to WhatsApp banking, right? So this is a journey for which you'll have to make those investments. And one of the downside is to either wait for it to happen or be a little early and make those investments. So some of us have been experimenting. So we bought took our voice part, which is Alexa and Google Assistant, in 2018. And for the first year or so, like the usage was so low, we should have just given it up, right? The platform itself is very early. Right? Things were like not happening, things were taking time. Today it's reasonably good, right? But still we are not able to solve for identity, we're still not able to solve for, so you can just give generic information there. I wish I could talk to Amazon Alexa and ask SBI Mutual Fund's portfolio value today, which can't happen. It just can't happen because of the way the technology is kind of, I mean, some fintech guy will come and say, I have a solution, but that doesn't work because there is a regulatory environment. So you'll have to work around both, right? The solution and the regulatory environment. It's a multi-year investment. And if you're passionate about solving for it, it's going to happen. Taking this whole stuff, right? So today the advantage is that most large organizations are in the corner of their organizations experimenting with these things. We know it's too early, it's going to take a while to scale. WhatsApp experience for us was a COVID-induced experience. We had no option. Right now that COVID is kind of behind us, it's kind of taken off. And when we did, I'll give you what we did. When we did this for B2C, we were very successful. Our partners started jumping and saying, "Humko bhi to do." We are also in the COVID environment. So we had to quickly come up with this similar solution for our B2B2C experience. So these investments are critical and we need to make those investments, and large organizations are doing it, but even the smaller can do it. For that, partners are available. There's tons and tons of fintech partners available for you to work with. One of the good things that's happened, and I was going around the exhibition booth, there's tremendous amount of talent, and large organizations are just looking forward for some use case or something that needs to help us solve for our problems today. Yeah, I don't know whether I answered your question.
No, absolutely. So, Arzan, one last question for you. So, with this whole, focus on the new UI that WhatsApp is now, done with Geo, and of course we're hoping that a lot of other enterprises and partners can leverage it to really bring a more app-like experience out for, even financial services, right? So the next buzz that we are hearing about is WhatsApp Pay. We've heard a lot of things around even in the booth today. Do you see this kind of, being that trigger for that next level of financial inclusion? Do you see that, like UPI, for instance, was a huge catalyst in itself? So where do you kind of see, and what are the use cases that you're primarily looking at solving, where we can actually truly get some momentum built on, having more unbanked coming on and then consuming these financial services?
Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, we are a technology platform, and depending on what every business, every customer wants to do, we will enable them to tailor their experiences for their audiences. Now, there could be someone who's, let's say like a Cred or a Flipkart, who wants to use the platform as a sales channel to send intelligent marketing notifications and enable a consumer to do a transaction through the medium of his choice. In that case, having a payment option available within the app is something that will make business sense, because it will help him to reduce his funnel drop and get him to do a purchase natively within the app itself. Now, there are organizations that will encourage a consumer to buy regardless of whatever payment method they choose to be. I mean, it's not like you have to do it. You could do it through any of the UPI apps that are on your phone. And WhatsApp Pay is work in progress. It is one step forward towards becoming present in the UPI space. It's a journey. We're doing pilots with a few consumers, and we will soon go live, P2M over a period of time. And whenever that happens, that's what you've seen in the Geo app, right? Likewise, there are some businesses who are less focused on commerce, but let's say more focused on customer service automation.
Right.
So there is differentiation that businesses choose to build to tailor their experiences for consumers on the platform. So it is entirely dependent on a business as to how they really want to build that journey. What is it that their customers really want? Like, there could be a bunch of them who are using only UPI apps and not really a credit card or a debit card. So they could make it customized to the target cohort that they really want to go and tap into. So I think that is how it is, and that is something which will keep evolving as the entire payment industry also matures.
Sure. So Aditya, on this note, now again, with conversational AI, especially on WhatsApp, right? If the enterprise aspiration is to kind of go and acquire customers, like he said, there are only about 150 million of them who can be on these apps, right? Beyond that, if there is really, a huge audience which is coming on WhatsApp, and is getting powered by conversational AI, are we saying that the next gold mine of data is now sitting in this conversational AI, because all your events that earlier used to happen on, let's say, web or apps which are not getting downloaded anymore is now kind of, residing in the space of chat and voice and everything,
Yeah.
right? So is there something that you are doing with organizations? Is there something that, fintechs or other large organizations which have this huge base and therefore huge amount of data? How is that getting leveraged?
So I'll take a use case. It'll be easy for everyone to understand. So we took an organization which is very similar to Staples. I think everyone knows Staples globally.
The office stationery.
The stationery, and it's called Officeworks in Australia. So they wanted to do similar for kitchen appliances, right? These small trays, the trolleys, and the handles. But they wanted to go to the local, even villages, to sell there. But now how do they go there? WhatsApp, right? So we put that whole thing on WhatsApp, right? We enabled the WhatsApp business account, and we built a different UI on top of it, right? We brought the whole business online, right? And at very low cost, at great margins for them, right? And it was personalized. When I say personalized, because the diversity challenge India brings to you is amazing, right? Cultural diversity, you have language diversity, you have multiple different things, right? So we were able to tackle all those pockets.
And
right?
you don't have to build apps and then maintain iOS and Android
Exactly.
and versions of them.
Exactly, absolutely, right? So and we enable that through WhatsApp. I'm just giving you a use case. And now all the data is residing for that. So normally what we refer to is like a data charter. A data charter is basically building a good operating model for your data, which means there's a place where you generate data, there's a place where you curate data, there's a place where you ethically use data, right, with all, not just because policies are there, but because it's customers' data, right?
Absolutely.
And there is a place where you communicate the data back to customer, either for revenue purposes or for experience purposes, right? So you build that whole operating model for data, right? And you kind of run with it. That's what we did for this organization as well. And the most important thing there is transparency, right? Because today, I mean, again, plenty of issues out there in the market. What do you do with customer data and the transparency, especially post-pandemic, right? People are fearing in terms of where all my data is being used, right? So you want to be very transparent with them in terms of where the data is going to be used, right? I think that is very critical. I think that's the key thing we tell people in terms of you have millions and trillions of data, but can you start being more transparent? Can you be more ethical, right? That is going to get you a better revenue uplift than just going and bombarding with offers.
Correct. No, absolutely right. So it's important to get all that data back into your maybe your
Absolutely.
CRMs and your
Yes.
CDPs and then continue to
Yeah.
harness that. Great. Thank you so much. I would leave this session quickly open to the audience. If you have any questions, any queries for the panelists here, please. Yeah, of course. I think he's just getting you the mic, so. Yeah, we'll do 2 questions.
So the question is for Mr. Srinivas Jain. So while you're talking about the ways SBI Mutual Fund is using to leverage, it's more about reaching out to customers, right? Technology used for that. But what is SBI doing for the strategies that are there for mutual funds, right? How to improve that? For that, is any new technologies being used like AI or something else?
No, just this morning I had a session with SEBI chairman, so I can tell you. So I think the mutual fund business of investment management is a little bit of an art, a little bit of a science, and of course now a whole lot of data. We've just kind of scratched the bottom on the data side. There's a whole lot that can be done. But data can also be too disruptive. So we need intuitive approach with data. So we're building lots of models internally. We have a data science team. But it's very early days. We don't want to be an algorithm company. We want to be a company which can add value. At some point of time, these things will become big. But at this point of time, it's like a small experiment incubation that's happening in the company. So we are one up on it. We are one of the few asset managers who spend a lot on data science. We have a dedicated data science vertical. Specialist, we have a small R lab in the company. We do a lot of that stuff. But when you were to ask me, is there a proof of the pudding? Not yet. Like in one example, I can give you one thing that we did very well is when the COVID happened and there was this whole, so the issue was about understanding how was the impact of COVID. And we used a lot of big data algorithm coming from open data, especially on logistics and transportations, where things were stuck up, where things were not moving, to predict how bad the situation was. So at a macro level, we still are able to make some opinion, but not at an investment decision level. That will take some time.
Okay. And is SBI MF doing anything on the quant fund side, developing a quant fund, real quant fund?
Like I said, quant funds are, I'm not saying it's bad or good. We do a lot of passive funds. You might have seen today we launched 5 new passive funds. For us, quant and passive are in between, right? You know, you try and take an algorithm and work on it in a quant. Here, you've already built out an index that's out there, and you work on it. Somewhere we'll come to what is not necessarily quant, what we call a smart beta. At some point of time, we'll come to that level. We do 1 or 2 small smart beta, but we'll come to that. But this conference is more about
inclusion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, my question is for Arzan. So as you mentioned that WhatsApp is looking to be a front for a lot of businesses and a lot of future applications, like as ma'am also mentioned what you did with Geo. What is the outlook when it comes to health services? Is that something which is being explored? Because earlier today when there was a session on e-rupee, for example, and there was a lot of discussion on how targeted benefits can be given, and as you must be aware, NHA is leading that effort. So on those lines, or on any similar lines, is there something that WhatsApp is exploring on the lines of health services or on health financing even, especially when you look at WhatsApp itself being a payments portal now, or a payments gateway, sorry?
So thank you, great question. Unfortunately, there's not much that is currently visible to the outside world on what's happening on healthcare. But one is, of course, the entire discussion with NHA and the central government is a parallel track, and whenever that goes live, that goes live. But to give you a few examples in India, Narayana Hospital, one of the biggest hospitals headquartered in south of India, they have enabled patient care for patients who have got diabetes through WhatsApp. So notifications as to when does a patient have to take an insulin shot every single day, which is critical. Those kind of notifications, getting a feedback back to the consulting surgeon to make sure that everything is on track. So they have been way ahead of the curve in terms of envisaging how technology can be a game changer within healthcare. And they're working with one of our partners to identify use cases that will give consumers a much better experience rather than standing in lines or waiting in casualty to get an appointment. So again, like I said, it's a start. They're probably thought leaders in our country, but looking at what they've successfully been able to implement, I'm sure a lot will follow suit, especially as there is some kind of direction and order from the central government with respect to technology adoption within healthcare.
Okay, so we'll wind up the session. Thank you, guys. I quickly want to summarize my key takeaways from the entire session. Of course, Aditya, going back to you, organizations have to be omnipresent. And I think different tech stacks are kind of, enabling that. The largest amongst them is Conversational AI. And that is something that, alludes to why WhatsApp is so popular, because, it's something that really makes, absence of an app, not really felt. It's something that helps in distribution, customer acquisition, literacy, really adopting a lot of these services that, fintechs and FIs have been aspiring for. And and of course data, like you said, harnessing all this conversational AI data and then using it effectively within organizations. I think there's a huge opportunity that presents, to every one of us in the next, I think about 24 months or so. So great having you guys here, some really key learnings and takeaways, and look forward to interacting with you guys, more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Sonia, Arzan, Srinivas, and Aditya.